Hello and welcome to week one of Logic and Critical Thinking Online. My name is Chris LaBarbera. I'm an adjunct faculty at Colby Sawyer, and I'll be working with you this semester to go through the philosophical principles of logic and critical thinking, and I'm looking forward to working with you all. I'm glad you're here. This week, I'll present some slides to give you an overview of the week one content and talk about the overall course requirements. This week's content corresponds to your chapter one, pages 1 through 8 of the textbook. So feel free to refer to those pages as you go through these slides.
So, first, maybe this is the first philosophy course you've ever taken, but philosophy originates from two ancient Greek root words, philo meaning love, and Sophia, who is the goddess of wisdom. So, philosophy literally is the love of wisdom. As an academic discipline, philosophy covers broad speculations about the nature of the earth. It's sometimes called the first science, and the ancient Greek philosophers, some of whom you may be familiar with, Plato, Socrates, Aristotle, all ask questions about the nature of reality, what comprised the world, whether God existed, and these philosophical questions began the human inquiry into many different fields, including mathematics and the sciences.
When we study philosophy, we think of the different component parts, fields, or branches of philosophy that comprise the discipline, and this graphic shows the 5 branches of philosophy. And you can see where logic fits within the whole there. So I just wanted to briefly give you an overview of all of those branches so that in case you're interested in the study of philosophy later on, you could explore those other areas. The area of metaphysics, the branch of philosophy, studies the existence and reality that we all live in. Metaphysical questions are questions like what is time? Is the universe infinite or finite? Does the human soul exist? So these are questions that have plagued philosophers for decades and centuries, and they're really interesting questions with lots of different theories behind them. Metaphysical questions are some of the most interesting to discuss, but they are not directly related to what we'll be studying in this logic class. Questions of epistemology are, those are questions of the theory of knowledge or the study of knowledge itself. How do we get to know what we know and what counts as valid knowledge? And how does that correspond to the reality we're in? So those questions are related to logic in terms of what constitutes good knowledge or verifiable knowledge. However, we'll see that logic focuses a little bit more specifically on the content of arguments itself. So epistemology, very related to logic, just wanted to give you a sense of what that is too. The questions of beauty, art, and appearance have also been topics that philosophers have discussed for centuries, and those are called aesthetic questions. So the branch of aesthetics studies the arts, what makes music sound good, what makes art beautiful, a sculpture beautiful. So those are philosophical questions around the study of art and appearance. And then finally, ethics is the study of human behavior, and in particular, what makes good human behavior or bad human behavior, right and wrong, the questions of right and wrong, and how they're applied to our society in terms of social and legal policy. So those questions are very interesting to discuss as well, a little bit tangentially related to logic, but we'll definitely see that logic can relate to some moral thinking. So again, logic, the course you're in now, we are actually studying in-depth arguments. We're looking at arguments as kind of a structural, and we're going to have kind of a meta view in terms of when we hear them to evaluate both the truth of the support that's given to the argument and the structure of the whole to see whether the conclusion logically follows from that support. So when we study arguments, it's really interesting. We'll be looking at a lot of diverse viewpoints, but mostly we'll be looking at argument structure and the truth of the reasons behind them. So I'm looking forward to evaluating this with you this semester. In this first week of the class, we'll focus on the question of what is critical thinking, which is also called critical reasoning. And we'll also look at your first textbook chapter 1. And in the first week, I've decided to just keep things very introductory. So for week 1, we're only looking at pages 1 through 8. So you'll want to make sure you have a copy of that text and look at those first few pages while you're looking through these slides. In addition, while the textbook is on order for you, and if you're looking for it at the bookstore or on any online vendor like Amazon, you'll see it's available for purchase and rental. But I've gone ahead and copied the first 2 weeks content and posted that to the course shell so that you could have that to get started in the course. So we'll be looking at what is critical thinking, what is critical reasoning, but also we might want to rightly ask at this point, what is an argument? And that is an important thing to think about. When we talk about an argument in common terms, is that the same as talking about an argument in philosophy? So let's focus on this question of what is an argument in philosophical terms. As you'll learn in this course, an argument is comprised of two components, two pieces that comprise any argument. The first is the supporting points, which we call premises. An individual supporting point is called a premise. And so an argument is comprised of supporting points, usually more than one, that lead up to the main point, which is the second component part of the argument, which we call the conclusion. So know that in our class, we'll be studying arguments that are comprised of premises, usually multiple premises, and a conclusion. The premises are supporting that conclusion, usually with evidence or with a structure, and we'll look more into argument structure really soon. What's important to know is that we may think of arguments in a lot of different ways, and many of the arguments that we encounter may include premises and conclusions, but not everything that we hear is an argument. So not every statement that we see is legitimately called an argument, and any statement that we see that doesn't really present conclusions supported by reasons or premises, we would say that's not an argument. So remember that not everything that we encounter, not every statement we encounter will qualify as an argument. And so let's look at a couple of examples. So if I said to you, I like chocolate ice cream, this is not an argument as it stands on its own. It's a statement of mere preference. So we don't see a conclusion supported by reasons. We just see that someone says that this is their preference. We would not call this an argument. Another statement here is, let's suppose I said that we are on planet Earth. That simple factual statement is not an argument in and of itself. It's just a statement of what happens to be one factual truth that we all assume to be reality, current state of reality. So remember that arguments have to have premises supporting conclusions, and if they do not, then we would say those statements are not arguments. However, we just need to change the content slightly to create a statement of mere preference into an argument. So consider the fact that I could say to you, chocolate ice cream is wonderful because it is sweet, creamy tasting, and refreshingly cold on hot days. Well, then we've actually created an argument. That actually is an argument. I've given you a conclusion. The conclusion for this statement is that chocolate ice cream is wonderful. And then I've given you three reasons, which we also call premises in this course, to believe in that conclusion. It's sweet, it's creamy tasting, and it's refreshingly cold. So keep in mind that arguments are statements that involve two component parts, the reasons, which we call the premises, and the main point, which we'll call the conclusion. Arguments can have many multiple premises, even up to an infinite number of premises, which is interesting. However, most of the arguments that we study in this class will only have a handful of premises, typically between 1 and 3 premises, leading up to one conclusion. You'll see soon that logic is also intuitive in nature, and you'll find that you may have a naturally good sense of what is logical, especially looking into the practice exercises for the course. One other point that we want to look at is how critical thinking varies from other forms of reasoning, and this is something you'll also see in your textbook chapter 1. Critical thinking is something very specific, and we'll study it in this class at length, but it's distinct from other forms of thinking that you'll see in your daily life. For example, in everyday dialogue, we see a lot of mere disagreement. This is very common. people will remain staunchly committed to their views and they will not be open to changing them regardless of the reasoning presented. So basically, in mere disagreement, we have two different positions or more that are just already committed to the viewpoint and are looking for a vehicle to just air their viewpoint or grievances, as the case may be. But what we don't see is true evaluation of the truth of the premises or evaluation of whether the conclusion follows. In that case, we'd say that two people are merely disagreeing. They're not really open to evaluating the truth of the matter, the truth of the reasoning behind the conclusions, and as a result, they'll stay in a kind of locked mere disagreement mode. And we see this very often, especially in social media and in politics, in the news. We see a lot of people that are just kind of staunchly committed to their viewpoint, and they're not really open to evaluating the truth of the premises or even hearing the other side. So we need to be careful about when we see people that are arguing whether they're actually doing critical thinking or whether we see them merely disagreeing. Uh, in addition, another form of reasoning or thinking that we're often involved in is passive listening. For example, maybe you've taken classes in the sciences and you've just needed to attend lectures and take notes, merely absorb all of the information that's presented to you from others. For example, maybe they said that water's chemical composition is H2O. You would most likely write that down. Maybe you'd write down the chemical structure. You would passively absorb the information as true from the specialist who told you this, but you would not go into a mode of critically evaluating that information. So passive listening is also a form of thinking that stands in contrast to critical thinking. So critical thinking is not like these other two modes of discourse. It is not passive listening and it is not mere disagreement. In critical thinking, we're actually evaluating the truth in terms of the premises and reasons behind the conclusions. We're actually looking into whether there are reasons for these premises to be regarded as true. And we're also looking at the structure of the argument as a whole to see whether the conclusion that's presented actually necessarily follows from the premises that were being presented. We're also open in critical reasoning to revising our beliefs, especially if we find that there are better justifications for the conclusions presented by other explanations. So we could recognize the validity of opposing viewpoints, but we want to always present valid support behind all of our beliefs. So now I just want to talk a little bit about the upcoming course requirements. The first thing I'd encourage you to do as we study logic is to carefully review the course syllabus, which has been posted above the week one module. So go ahead and download that syllabus, and I would review it in detail, making sure that you pay particular attention to the course schedule to make sure that you know what's expected of you in terms of the readings, the content, and in terms of any of the assignments that would be due each week. This course will require first obtaining the textbook. Yes, we do use the textbook, and as I mentioned earlier, I've gone ahead and just copied the first two chapters of content, the first 2 weeks of content, that is, and put them on the course site. This is just to give you a start while you're waiting to order that text. But we do use this at length. We'll use it in terms of I'll refer to it in the lectures. You will use it for exercises at different times, and it's the best model for engaging in the other course assignments that I've posted to this class. Okay, so make sure you do get that textbook, rent it, buy it, or get it a copy for yourself, and make sure you have that definitely by the second week because we'll start using it rather extensively in week 3 and beyond. It does also require engaging in weekly assignments. So what's interesting about this course is, like a math course, this will have objective answers to many of the assignments. In week 1, there's an introductory assignment, which is about arguments that are missing something. And you'll find that your intuition may help you answer that. You'll see what's missing in those arguments. And then I have a second set of exercises that are arguments where something has gone wrong. And you'll also see that you'll have an instinct about what has gone wrong in the reasoning. So obviously, because logic is intuitive, some of these you'll be be able to answer based on your experience, but I want to make sure that you know that the weekly assignments, especially the ones going into weeks 2 through the end of the course, they will very much replicate what you'll see in the text. So weekly assignments are due Sunday, and they're graded out of 10 points, and you'll have them throughout the course. Look at the course schedule for more detail. They comprise half of the overall grade. The other half of the overall grade is 5 section quizzes. These are released on Fridays throughout the course schedule with a Wednesday at the end because we actually end a little bit shorter than normal this semester. So I just wanted to make sure you knew that there are 5 section quizzes. You'll see the schedule on the syllabus, so feel free to refer to that. I would mark them in your calendar now. So go ahead and put those dates on your calendar now for all of those 5 section quizzes. They're very important and they comprise half of the final grade. You do have 60 minutes to complete each quiz, and for this course, there is no separate final exam. Finally, I wanted to mention that I have posted every week optional weekly discussions. I say optional, but I'm going to say I strongly encourage you to participate in these weekly discussions. The weekly discussions will be a way for you to engage in the course content and also to practice some of the skills that we'll learn in this course. So I'm asking for your response to be posted by Thursdays each week. I also would like to see you respond to other students over the weekend on the discussion, but again, this is going to be optional. However, in order to incentivize the discussion forums, what I've decided to do is make the discussions worth bonus points at the end of the semester. So there are 10 weekly discussion forums. I will look at your level of engagement in those forums, keep track of that, and you can earn up to plus 10 at the end of the course based on your engagement throughout the entire semester. And those points will be added at the end of the course. So again, just something to note, the course syllabus does outline the grading scheme, and then those points will just accrue as you engage through the semester and will be added towards the end. Very important to participate just to stay engaged in the course content. The discussions will be due Thursdays. Okay, so I'm looking forward to working with you this semester, and if you have any questions, I am on email almost all of the time. Feel free to email me at clabarbera@colbysawyer.edu. I also do office hours by appointment, and I'd be happy to meet with you online through Zoom or WebEx. Thanks, and looking forward to working with you in Logic.